Now, if we were to use that idea of negative painting and focusing on all the area and the lines in between, just like we did for Max the cat, and applied it into a zebra, we'd have a really wonderful design.
It's a bit more like a puzzle. And that's just because the lines are really tiny, and when we do the line drawing, it's going to be very difficult to know what we should be filling in. All I really need to do is look at the reference photo and look where the big lines are, like right here, and then work my way down to the tinier ones here. So you can take a look. We've got that dark background. That might be really nice, and play with those stripes. So let's see what happens. See if that's fairly straight. You don't have to have the tape, but it might give it a nice look. Okay, now we have a nice surface to work on, and if you want, like I said, you can always mix your colors, put them here so you can remember what you used. So I'm thinking about my biggest lines first, and I'm also thinking about the size brush I might want to use. Something that's not too big, just maybe a brush size like this or like that. This is a 20 or a 16, that's a little too big, but I might be able to get away with it. Now, it would be easier for me to start with the lines that are the smallest because I'm right-handed and I'm going to work over to my right-hand side, but I'll be able to follow my pattern better if I start on this side working my way over here. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm going to go ahead and just get some color. Now, this brush is not going to lay down as much color as a larger brush, so I'm just going to throw some color in here. So I'm looking for the smallest lines right through here. And let's see, that ears needs to be a little rounder. Just getting acquainted. I think I'll hold off on the hair up there and work with the detail. Test it, that's okay. And then think about where I'm going to find the most obvious line to help guide me. So over here, I'm a little confused on what's what. I'll look at the eye, because that'll be a little easier. And then I'm going to look right above the eye, right here, this space. That's going to go up. That'll be an easier spot for me to start. So I'll just go and fill this in. And then come over here. And I'm using the darker color just because I think it makes it dramatic. And I'll try to play with the tip of my brush so I get a different size stroke. This is going to test your skills as far as how much water you're applying and the amount of pressure on the brush. We're just making little tiny lines through here, and then over, we're just going to continue that. You don't have to be perfect. We just need to grab a little bit of color and try to add a few lines coming down to the nose. You can use this as a guide, but if it's not exact, that's okay, because every zebra is going to have different lines. None of them are exactly the same. And then we'll bring it down into the nose down here. And speckle my nose into this area. You can see it's a little speckled. So I'm just letting the very tip of my brush touch some of those areas. Get the nostril in. And speckle, speckle. And that's just the very tip of the brush. That's all we're doing. So you're learning how to not press too hard, just using the very, very tip. And, you know, if it's hard for you, then you know, just do what you can and see what develops. And it doesn't, you don't need, you can also paint bigger too if you want. Filling in those little lines. So what I'm trying to do is play with my brush stroke. And I'm going to go to the eye. And let's get a little color in the eye. And to give our zebra some personality. We want to leave the shine in the eye if we can. That means the white spot. And maybe speckle it a little bit through here. And then let's continue on to these other lines, working our way around the face. Now, as I'm going down here, I'm thinking I'd like to continue on, but again, I don't want to get my wrist in the paint. So I think this is going to be okay. Yeah, it'll be all right. Let's go ahead and follow that line down. Just scoop up the paint and taper the brush with just a little bit of pressure. Press, maybe reshape that. And just bring that line down. Maybe a little bit of that quinacridone gold might be nice. Or maybe a bit more of that red, drop that in there. I was wondering if I could just mingle those colors. And continue bringing it down. Just fill that up, and then down here, maybe a few little spots to give it some detail. Then as we start to work our way up, I might tilt it a little bit so I can access some of those areas a little bit better. And I think I'm going to work my way from the top down here. Let's find some of those lines. I seem to stay towards the purples. And I'm getting a little lost in those lines, so all I'm going to do is vary them a little bit. That means press a little harder or a little lighter, so it changes the stroke. And then as we come up here, let me see, how far am I going up? I'm going to maybe get a bit more water on my brush and bring that down. So if I tried to do it exactly like my photograph, that could be a little tough. So I'm just trying to leave enough space in between those lines. And for the ear over here, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, so I'm just going to try to fill it in there, and maybe a few little lines to give the impression of some hair. So we're just creating an illusion. This is going to be the hardest one, and a few little spots for those areas. Just like that. Remember, if it's a challenge, this is a tricky one. So just take your time, treat it like a puzzle. Get a few little lines down here. And you might go slower than I am, and that would be easier than what I'm doing. I'm doing this fairly quickly. And here there's a lot of pencil lines, so it is confusing. So I'm just going to let the brush guide me. And what that means is I'm going to press and lift and get a little tapered edge instead of trying to fit exactly within that pencil line that I'm not really sure what's what. Let's just fill that in. Let the brush, because we're going from up here, going down underneath the chin. So that I do know. And then down here, press a little more and lift and pull it down. And in this area, I think I'm just going to add a few little dots just to break that up. And these are the bigger lines, which should be a bit easier. So let's see, what's going to be our big line? Okay, let's bring it down about here. I really think that almost anything you do will be all right. Let's bring that down and maybe a few little hairs through there. Let's go down through that line. So I'm trying to, there's a line, I'm going on the opposite side and then filling in the space between those lines. Mingling. So we started on the nose, work our way around, and then go over here. Now I'm thinking I could use maybe a larger brush. Go ahead and go around. It has a bit more blue in it. So I'm working with blues and reds and just trying to have a smooth stroke. I'm trying to avoid a very straight line. I just noticed I was a little straight there, so I'll try to break that up a little bit. And I'm debating, do I need to go into a into a bigger brush to cover that stroke? I think we're still good. All right, so we've got our basic zebra in, and to really make them pop, what I want to do is go along the outside. So I'm going to shift to my larger brush. And I plan on using all those same colors because you can see we just kind of lose them on this side. I want it to be dramatic. This is the indigo, which is similar to our black. I'll take some red in there. I'm trying to get a nice rich color. Maybe bring in some gold. Am I going to like that? Well, let's just see. Let's go ahead and start up here. I want to get enough water, otherwise if I don't have water then I go over the edge and you can see that it's pretty dry. And with that combination it ended up being more black and it doesn't have the same kind of purple in there, which I'd like to have a bit more of that. So I think I'll bring in some of the red, drop it in just like that. Go along the outside. And if I want to get some of those hairs, all I need to do is take my brush and just touch the edge. I think that works. I was going to soften some of those, but I think that might be interesting. And let's go along the outside there, maybe take a little bit of blue. I'm going to let all those colors mingle, just like we did inside of our zebra. Let's go along the outside there. I have a lot of water there, so that's not going to be that dark, so I'm going to drop in a bit more of that darker color. Using this big brush, I can cover a large area quickly. And let's give it a few little hairs just by brushing back. I'm scooping up enough of my water. I'm scooping up my water and color, maybe dropping in a bit more color up there. And then let's go around the outside of the nose. Now, if I go like this, I can easily go over my line. So what I'm going to try to do is hold my brush on this side or turn my paper. I'm going to try to go along the outside of the nose, on the outside of the pencil line. Just like that, maybe cover my little white spots. And then as I get down to the nose, I think I want to get some of those little whiskers in there. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to clean up that line. And I'm going to try to paint on the, in between those little whiskers like that. So instead of this being our whiskers, it's the space in between them. Bringing it down a little bit further, I might break it up a tiny bit. Try to make them a little smaller or reshape them. What I could always do is come in with some white on top of this, because that can be tough. That might feel like a little bit of a challenge. So what you could do is wait, come back in with white paint if you want, or soften a few of those. We're just giving the impression of, I think they're a little too straight, but just a little bit. And a few more. Then let's do the same thing, go up along the body. You can see I'm constantly scooping up my color. So I'm trying to get more color on my brush. Go along the line. If my brush isn't gliding along my paper surface, I'm going to get a bit more water in there and more color. And then I'm going to go along the outside. So we've actually mingled a few colors in here. Now you could use just one color. You don't have to use all the colors that I used. And let's see what it looks like. I should wait for all of this to dry. That would be a good thing to do. But I want to see it now. Take your tape off slowly so you don't tear your paper. And if you want, you can always come back in and add more of those, or maybe a stroke here and there if you want to. Or maybe if you want that hair to be softer, just take a damp brush, go along a few of those edges, and you've got a great little zebra.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you learned something new and challenged yourself and had a great time. So until next time, have fun and happy painting.